Hello, Chrissi.
Hello, Alex.
I have been thinking about the past 2 months of the PGCAP study and especially about the value of feedback in it. The matter of feedback has always been intriguing and even perplexing for me. On one side, there are students requesting for feedback and often not paying to it much attention, even if it has been provided. On another side, there are institutional guidelines indicating that the provision of feedback on assessed work has to be provided to students in an appropriate and timely manner and in a way that promotes learning and facilitates improvement, but does not increase the burden of assessment. I find it is a challenging task to provide a sensible and developmental feedback, which would encourage students to expand their learning. Chrissi, what gave you confidence to think, assume that your feedback will help us to progress professionally?
When I was confronted with a question for the first time, and wasn't sure where to start and how to explain myself, what I do, and why, then I read the question again, and I started remembering the times I was sitting in the train going home after a day at work, and listening to students talking to each other on their mobiles. Many times, they are talking about feedback they received from their lecturers. Students sound upset, frustrated, and hurt. Some don't seem to think that their lecturers care about them. Is this evidence of some kind of depersonalization in our universities? Is the massification of education to blame? The challenge is, of course, how can we personalize learning when we have to deal a large number of students, and many times we don't even remember their names? This is indeed a big challenge. But I strongly believe that we can do something about it, and need to remember that little things can make a huge difference. I think we need to focus more on formative feedback. Today, we have the technology that can be used to facilitate conversations, especially e-portfolios can be really effective tools for that. However, technology itself is not the answer to cure everything, but it has the potential to enable and extend feedback opportunities. We used an e-portfolio system on the core module to connect and conduct asynchronous, informal and continuous conversations about your work, and trigger deeper engagement with the feedback. And for participants who engaged with this, it worked really well. What the above students experience hurts. I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it too. I would like to believe that we academic developers can change this through modeling good feedback practice to our students who have their own students. We definitely need to practice what we preach through the way we design, deliver, and evaluate our sessions and programs, through bringing our sessions to live and making them memorable and trigger thinking and reflection. Only if our students, who are academics, come to the realization the power feedback has for and of learning, and feel firsthand the benefits of sensitive, constructive, and forward-looking feedback, and the destructive power of careless, negative, and woolly feedback, they will start seeing feedback as something of value. But we also need to ask ourselves a question: what do we really want to assess, and why?
I agree that the positive, constructive, and forward-looking feedback can be a powerful tool for facilitating students' learning. Personally, I endeavor to make feedback as developmental as possible, mainly by indicating how particular work can be advanced further. But, looking back at the time spent for composing feedback, I often recall the line from the academic handbook that feedback should not increase the burden of assessment for staff.
It shouldn't be a burden for staff. Feedback should be seen as the vehicle for learning, as something that is seamlessly built in the teaching practice in the learning process, and as such, there needs to be made room in the workload, but technology can help us with this too. Maybe it feels like a burden, because students don't seem to engage with it. But why don't they engage? Maybe we need to rethink our approach and examine what the purpose of summative feedback is. Many refer feedback as summative feedbacks, which are provided at the end of a module on summative assessment. Research shows that students believe summative feedback is not very useful, since it comes at the end of a module, when all they care about is if they have passed. What does that mean for our practice? Should we be focusing more on formative feedback on summative assessment and formative assessment? feedback that we can or should give during the learning process and which would be more useful for students and they can act upon. Something to think about. I think academics need to recognize that feedback is a partnership between them and their students. Only then they will see the value of it and start reflecting on their own feedback practice and introduce changes that do have the power to engage students with feedback. I was hoping that the feedback you received from me would also have an impact on your learning as well as on your own practice. In other words, do you see our feedback in a different light?
I was amazed when I received my first and then subsequent feedback during my PGCAP study. First, it was personalized, means my tutor was writing to me, not just providing some standardized sentences similar to the grade descriptors. Second, I received feedback comments on literally every thought in my work. Third, the volume of feedback was quite substantial, not just a few lines. For instance, on one of my early teaching observations of 1,000+ words, I received almost 500 words of the constructive feedback. Altogether, it was very encouraging, and it felt like it was rather as a discussion on the subject matter, not a coursework.
The key for me is to be sensitive, to show that we care and recognize the strength in each student's performance. We need to find a way to boost their confidence that they can do it, and show them that we believe in their abilities, and that they can attain more if they invest more time and energy in their learning. We can only achieve this if we and our students recognize and experience learning as a partnership and an opportunity to learn with and from each other. When we start recognizing that our students are not empty vessels, that they all add something unique and enriching to, and that we can learn a lot from them, we will have opened our eyes and minds, transform feedback and feed forward into a two-way process or a conversation through which we can all benefit.
Yes, it felt exactly as an interesting conversation from which I could get a better insight into the subject matter. How much time have you spent on providing feedback on my or our work?
I would estimate that it is between 30 minutes and 1 hour. Some require more, other pieces require less. It also depends on the length of the work and the media. The portfolio provides a great opportunity to connect tutors and students and create asynchronous conversations, and I am really pleased that you did submit drafts and engaged in the feedback conversations. Sometimes I provide the feedback in one go, other times I leave it for a bit, and then get back to the work. I feel that I need to reflect more and think more about it to provide a meaningful feedback account, something that can be used to enhance a particular piece further. Also, I see feedback as an opportunity to learn. After all, teaching is learning. I don't like giving away answers because I feel this reduces the opportunities for students to think and engage. Many times, there is not just one correct answer. I like to think that I trigger thinking through questioning using a dear old Socrates approach. This is more useful and creates an opportunity to move the dialogue and the conversation forward, using technology synchronously and asynchronously, and my experience shows that this is exactly what happens. Because I see the relationship of student and teacher as a partnership. However, I read all pieces carefully and try to understand the thinking behind them, even if some ideas and concepts are not fully developed or explored yet. I like that part of discovery reading and reading between the lines. Sometimes it doesn't make sense the first time, but that is normal because we are all different. We think and express differently too.
Would you provide the same level of thoughtfulness or being constructive of your feedback if you had 100+ pieces of work to mark to the deadline?
Yes, the level of thoughtfulness to 10, 30, or 100 students would be the same. My feedback would still be personalized, sensitive, and constructive. The language it is written makes a difference. I strongly believe that. It is so easy to become too academic when we provide feedback and forget about the real purpose of feedback, which is to communicate a message that will encourage further learning. We need to color our words and fill them with emotion, making the message personal. The same, of course, applies when we provide digital feedback, audio, video, animated, or using images to complement or replace written feedback. How we say things is equally important to what we say, if not even more important, and we seem to forget that, unfortunately. We need to be more careful about how we say things and remember that showing empathy when we communicate is vital. We can do that in one sentence, and we can do it with a whole paragraph. I get carried away sometimes and feel that my feedback is too extensive. I am trying to deal with this currently, and hope to develop a strategy to condense my message. The quality and the approach should be maintained, the quantity will be less. But remember, less can be more. Also, we need to remember that the tutor is not the only one who has to provide feedback, and sometimes it might be appropriate to ask our students on what specifically they would like feedback on. We need to rethink our assessment and feedback strategies and build in opportunities for self-evaluation and peer feedback as mentioned above, which might be able to turn some of the individuals into group tasks, reducing our feedback load. Also, technology can be utilized for remarking and automated feedback, reducing our workload even further.
I would love to incorporate all your suggestions about improving the quality and richness of feedback. My only concern is time. I am not sure that the current workload model university uses recognizes the demanding nature of the personalized and creative feedback. If I strive to improve my feedback to students continuously, I might find myself doing all that in my spare time, which is fine by me, but may not be acceptable for all tutors in the university.
My response is linked to formative feedback. Feedback we provide during the learning process to increase the appetite for more learning. Unfortunately, not everybody uses the opportunity to engage in such informal feedback conversations, and the challenge would be how to engage the unengaged, because usually these are the students who need it most, even if they think they don't. However, it is equally important to stretch and challenge the more engaged and the keener students so that they don't get bored or we lose them.
I think I know why not everyone uses the opportunity to engage with the formative feedback. When I received the formative feedback on my work, I felt encouraged and at the same time obliged to continue my exploration into the subject. Can the summative feedback be as motivating?
Summative feedback is not the same, nor is it that powerful or useful for students. Evidence has shown that students don't really engage with it, and there are good reasons for that. It just comes too late, that is what they are telling us. Many times they don't even come to collect their work. Have you experienced this perhaps? Or they seem to care at the end of the module, and at the end of the program is the mark. How does this make you feel? When you realize that nobody or only a few students actually read the feedback you provided. It took you hours to put together. And these hours are all disappearing in the big black hole now. What does this tell us about summative feedback? Is there a way to make summative feedback more useful? How would this look like? When would you provide it? And in what format or medium? All I can do is to make you think, and I am really pleased that it worked. Thank you for your stimulating questions. I hope the answers give you an insight into my thinking and explain why I do things the way I think they should be done.
Thank you for your revealing comments about your way of offering feedback. It would be a life-changing time if feedback was rethought in the higher education as something we say, write, or impart in any other way to increase the appetite for more learning. On the other hand, I understand that even now nothing prevents me from reshaping my feedback practice to be more personalized, detailed, and encouraging. Despite quite diverse students' goals, I tend to believe that thoughtful and attentive feedback can assist in learning even to the most surface learning students.